the legend of the Three Nuns of Dudley Road. Deep within the shadows of local folklore lies a haunting tale of fear, tragedy, and a house that was said to disappear into the earth. Along a quiet road in Billerica, Massachusetts, known as Dudley Road, a strange legend has been passed down for generations. It tells of three women, believed by some to have been nuns, who were accused of practicing witchcraft during a time when fear and suspicion could transform ordinary people into targets of terrible rumors. According to the legend, the three women lived in a small house near the road. They were viewed with suspicion by members of the community, and rumors began spreading that they were involved in dark practices. As the story goes, fear eventually overwhelmed reason, and the accusations grew until the women were condemned. The legend claims that the three nuns were taken from their home and brought to a nearby area where they were executed by hanging from trees. Their deaths supposedly left behind a place marked by tragedy, and locals later claimed that the land itself seemed to remember what happened there. Years after the alleged execution, the story says that someone built a home on the same location where the three women had died. At first, the house appeared to be an ordinary structure standing on ordinary land. But according to the legend, something unusual began happening. The ground beneath the house supposedly started shifting, causing the building to slowly sink lower and lower into the earth. Over time, people claimed the house was being swallowed by the ground. Some versions of the story suggested that the land rejected the home because of the suffering that had occurred there. Others claimed the spirits of the three women remained connected to the location, unable to find peace because they had been victims of injustice. The image of a house slowly disappearing into the earth became one of the most memorable parts of the legend. A home, which should represent safety and stability, became a symbol of something darker, a reminder that forgotten tragedies can leave behind echoes that continue long after the original events have passed. Like many ghost stories, the legend grew stronger with every retelling. Strange sounds, unusual shadows, and unexplained experiences became woven into the story. Visitors who traveled to the area began sharing stories of feeling uneasy near the location, while others claimed to have witnessed strange occurrences connected to the old house. But what makes this legend especially fascinating is that it combines several themes that appear repeatedly throughout human history: fear of the unknown, accusations against outsiders, and the consequences of mass panic. The idea of innocent people being accused of witchcraft is not unique to this story. Throughout history, communities have sometimes turned against individuals during times of fear. When people searched for someone to blame during periods of hardship, disease, or uncertainty, accusations could spread quickly without evidence. The legend of the three nuns reflects those fears. Whether the events happened exactly as described, or whether the story changed over time, the tale represents a deeper human concern. What happens when fear becomes more powerful than compassion? There is, however, an important distinction between folklore and documented history. While the story has been shared for many years, there is no confirmed historical evidence proving that three nuns were executed for witchcraft on Dudley Road, or that a house actually sank into the ground because of supernatural forces. Yet the lack of historical proof has not caused the story to disappear. In many ways, the mystery is what keeps it alive. Legends often survive not because every detail can be proven, but because they connect with something deeper in the human imagination. The story of the three nuns and the disappearing house remains a chilling reminder of how easily fear can shape history, and how the memories of those fears can transform into legends that continue to capture our curiosity centuries later. To understand why a legend like the story of the Three Nuns could take hold, it is important to look at the world that created it. Throughout history, accusations of witchcraft have often appeared during times of uncertainty, fear, and social tension. The belief that certain individuals could use supernatural forces to harm others existed across many cultures for centuries. In colonial New England, where the Dudley Road legend is said to have originated, fears surrounding witchcraft were very real. Communities were often small, isolated, and deeply connected to religious beliefs. When something unexplained happened, a failed harvest, an illness, an unexpected death, or a string of bad luck, people sometimes searched for a reason. In a world where medicine and science were limited compared to today, supernatural explanations could become powerful. The idea of a witch was not always based on evidence. Sometimes accusations came from disagreements between neighbors, personal conflicts, jealousy, economic disputes, or fear of people who seemed different. A person who lived alone, practiced traditional remedies, had unusual knowledge, or simply did not fit into community expectations could become a target. The most famous example of this fear in colonial America was the Salem witch trials. During those trials, dozens of people were accused of witchcraft, and several were executed. The events became one of the most well-known examples of how fear and suspicion could spread through a community. Although the Dudley Road legend is not connected to any confirmed historical witchcraft trial, it reflects the same atmosphere of fear that existed during that era. It represents a time when accusations could carry enormous consequences and when a person's reputation could be destroyed by rumors. The detail that the women in the legend were described as nuns is also interesting. In colonial New England, the presence of nuns would have been unusual because the region was largely influenced by Protestant communities after English settlement. This has led some researchers and folklore enthusiasts to question whether the Three Nuns description may have changed over time as the story was retold. Folklore often transforms as it travels from one generation to another. A story may begin with a small event, but over decades or centuries, details can be added, changed, or exaggerated. A person may become a ghost, a house may become cursed, and a local rumor may become a legend. The image of three innocent women accused of witchcraft is especially powerful because it reflects a universal fear, the fear of injustice. Many ghost stories are not only about supernatural events, they are also about unresolved human emotions. A spirit that cannot rest is often symbolic of a wrong that has never been corrected. The legend of Dudley Road follows this pattern. The three women are not portrayed as villains. Instead, they are portrayed as victims of a community's fear. Their alleged haunting becomes less about revenge and more about remembrance. The story suggests that the past cannot simply be buried and forgotten. Throughout history, many societies have experienced moments where fear led to persecution. Witch trials in Europe and America, political purges, religious conflicts, and other forms of mass suspicion show a recurring pattern. When people feel threatened, they may look for someone to blame. This is one reason stories about witchcraft accusations continue to interest people today. They are not just tales about ghosts or mysterious events. They are warnings about human behavior. The story also raises questions about how history remembers those who suffered. When records disappear and facts become uncertain, stories often fill the empty spaces. A legend may not provide a perfect account of what happened, but it can preserve themes and emotions that remain meaningful. In the case of the Three Nuns of Dudley Road, the legend has survived because it combines several powerful ideas: fear, injustice, mystery, and the possibility that some places hold memories of what happened there. The mysterious house sinking into the earth adds another layer to the story. A building slowly disappearing beneath the ground creates a powerful image, almost as if the earth itself is trying to hide the evidence of a forgotten tragedy. But before exploring the haunted claims surrounding the location, it is important to understand how legends like this grow. A story does not need to be proven true to influence the imagination. Sometimes the questions left unanswered become the very reason a legend continues. And with Dudley Road, the biggest questions remain. Who were the three women? Did they truly exist? Was there ever a house that disappeared into the earth? Or did a story born from fear become something even more powerful? A reminder of the dangers of judgment without understanding. As the legend of Dudley Road continued to spread, the story became known not only because of the alleged fate of the three women, but because of the mysterious house that was said to have disappeared into the earth. This strange image transformed a local tale of tragedy into something much more haunting, a story where the land itself seemed connected to the events of the past. According to the legend, after the three women were accused of witchcraft and executed, someone eventually built a home on the same location where the tragedy supposedly occurred. At first, the house appeared completely ordinary. It was simply another structure standing among the trees and landscape of the area. But over time, the story claims that something unusual happened. The ground beneath the house supposedly began to shift. The foundation sank lower and lower, causing the building to appear as though it was slowly being swallowed by the earth. Stories like this appear in folklore around the world. A house that sinks, a building that is abandoned, or a location that seems to change over time often becomes connected to supernatural explanations. In many cultures, people have believed that places where great suffering occurred can somehow retain a memory of those events. The idea that the earth itself could remember tragedy is a powerful one. It appears in countless legends, battlefields where spirits are said to remain, old homes where voices are heard, and abandoned places where people claim to feel a strange presence. The Dudley Road legend follows this same pattern. The sinking house became a symbol of something unfinished, a reminder that the suffering of the three women could not simply disappear from history. Over the years, visitors and locals have shared stories connected to the area. Some claim to feel an unusual atmosphere near the location. Others reported hearing strange sounds, seeing unexplained shadows, or experiencing a feeling that something was different about the place. As with many haunted locations, these stories became part of the identity of the legend. Every unusual detail added another layer. A strange noise became a possible ghostly voice. An old foundation became evidence of a supernatural event. A quiet road became a place surrounded by mystery. However, folklore often grows through storytelling. Each person who shares the tale may add their own interpretation, and over time, the boundary between history and legend can become difficult to separate. The house itself became one of the most fascinating parts of the story because it represents more than a physical building. A house normally represents family, security, and permanence. The idea of a home sinking into the earth creates the opposite image, something stable becoming unstable, something meant to last being slowly erased. Some versions of the legend suggest that the house was not simply affected by natural causes, but was somehow connected to the spirits of the three women. The idea was that the land rejected the structure because it was built on a place marked by injustice. Another interpretation is that the sinking house represents how forgotten stories eventually return. The ground covering the house becomes symbolic, as if history itself is trying to bury what happened, but the legend keeps bringing it back to the surface. This theme appears in many ghost stories. The supernatural often acts as a way for people to explore real human emotions, regret, guilt, grief, and the desire for justice. The three women in the Dudley Road story are remembered not because they were believed to be dangerous, but because they were believed to have suffered. The haunting is not necessarily about fear of them. It is about sympathy for them. This is what separates many traditional ghost stories from simple tales of monsters or frightening creatures. The most memorable legends often contain a human tragedy at their center, even though there is no verified historical record proving that the events happened exactly as described. The story continues because it raises questions that remain relevant today. How many people throughout history have been judged unfairly because of rumors? How many lives have been changed because fear spread faster than truth? How many stories have been lost because the voices of ordinary people were never recorded? The legend of Dudley Road survives because it connects an old fear with a timeless lesson. The details may be uncertain, but the message remains powerful. Fear can cause people to commit terrible acts, and the memories of those actions can continue long after the people involved are gone. The mysterious house, whether real or imagined, became a symbol of that idea, a structure slowly disappearing, but a story refusing to vanish. Yet to truly understand the legend, it is necessary to look beyond the ghost stories and examine what can actually be proven. Separating folklore from documented history reveals another fascinating part of the mystery. Every great legend exists somewhere between history and imagination. Some stories begin with a real event and become exaggerated over time. Others may begin as rumors, misunderstandings, or cautionary tales that are passed from one generation to another. The legend of the Three Nuns of Dudley Road is a perfect example of how folklore can preserve a story even when historical evidence is difficult to find. The first question many people ask is simple: did the three nuns actually exist? At this time, there is no confirmed historical documentation showing that three nuns were accused of witchcraft, sentenced to death, and hanged along Dudley Road in Billerica, Massachusetts. There are no known official records that verify the specific events described in the legend. This does not necessarily explain exactly how the story began. Many local legends develop from pieces of truth that become transformed over time. A real person may become a fictional character. A misunderstood event may become something mysterious. A location may gain a reputation because of stories repeated for generations. One of the challenges with researching folklore is that ordinary people's experiences were not always recorded. Throughout history, many events involving poor communities, isolated individuals, or marginalized groups were never documented in official records. Oral traditions often became the way stories survived. However, the specific details of the Dudley Road legend raise questions. The description of the victims as nuns is unusual for colonial Massachusetts, where Catholic religious communities like convents and orders of nuns were not part of everyday life. This has led some people to wonder whether that part of the story may have changed through retelling. Folklore frequently adapts to the audience hearing it. A story may borrow familiar symbols to make it more understandable or dramatic. The image of three nuns accused of witchcraft combines two powerful ideas: religious figures and supernatural fear. Together, they create a story that immediately captures the imagination. The claim that the house sank into the ground also has possible natural explanations. Over time, buildings can settle because of unstable soil, poor foundations, water damage, erosion, or changes in the surrounding landscape. A structure that sits lower than the road or surrounding land can also create the appearance that it has sunk. For people seeing the location without knowing its history, a strange-looking foundation or partially buried structure could easily inspire a supernatural explanation. This does not make the legend meaningless. In fact, many folklore researchers believe legends are valuable precisely because they reveal what communities find important. A story does not have to be historically proven to tell us something about human fears, values, and memories. The legend of the Three Nuns reflects a very real part of history, the danger of mass panic and false accusations. While this particular story may not be documented, the broader reality of witchcraft accusations is historically true. Thousands of people across different countries and time periods were accused of witchcraft, and many suffered because of fear and superstition. The lesson behind the legend is therefore connected to real history. It reminds us that rumors can become powerful forces and that communities can make devastating mistakes when they abandon evidence and compassion. There is also another reason these stories survive. People are fascinated by places that seem to hold memories. Humans naturally connect locations with events. A battlefield, an abandoned building, or an old road can become more than just a physical place. It can become a symbol of what happened there, whether those events are documented, remembered, or imagined. The mystery surrounding Dudley Road continues because it leaves room for questions. If the story is completely fictional, why did it develop? If it is based on a forgotten event, what parts might be true? And why do certain legends remain alive while thousands of other stories disappear? Perhaps the answer is that the strongest legends are not only about what happened, they are about what the story represents. The three women of Dudley Road represent the fear of being misunderstood. The accusations represent the danger of believing rumors without proof. The sinking house represents the way history sometimes tries to bury uncomfortable truths. Whether the events happened exactly as the legend describes or not, the story continues to serve as a reminder of one of humanity's oldest lessons. Fear can spread quickly, but understanding takes time. And sometimes the stories we tell about the past reveal just as much about ourselves as they do about history. Across the world, legends have always served as a bridge between the past and the present. They carry memories, fears, warnings, and questions from one generation to the next. The legend of the Three Nuns of Dudley Road is one of those stories that continues to capture attention because it combines mystery with a deeper reflection on human nature. At its heart, this is not only a story about ghosts, witchcraft, or a house that supposedly sank into the earth. It is a story about what can happen when fear replaces understanding. The idea of innocent people being accused because of rumors is one that appears throughout history. Communities facing uncertainty have often searched for someone to blame. Sometimes those individuals were outsiders. Sometimes they were people who seemed different. Sometimes they were simply unlucky enough to become the focus of suspicion. The legend of the Three Nuns represents this timeless fear. The fear that a person can lose everything because others choose to believe a story before seeking the truth. This is one reason legends involving accused witches remain powerful today. They remind us that history is not only made by famous leaders, battles, and inventions. History is also shaped by ordinary people, by neighbors, families, communities, and the choices they make during difficult times. The image of the abandoned or sinking house adds another layer of meaning. A house is normally a symbol of belonging. It is a place where people create memories and feel safe. But in this legend, the house becomes a symbol of something unresolved, A building slowly disappearing into the earth creates the feeling that the past is trying to hide, but cannot fully disappear. The land itself becomes part of the story, almost like a witness that remembers what happened. This idea appears in many cultures. People often believe that certain places carry the emotions of events that happened there. A battlefield may feel heavy with history. An old home may feel connected to the people who lived there. A forgotten road may inspire stories because it feels like it holds secrets. Whether these feelings come from something supernatural or simply from the power of human imagination, they show how strongly people connect places with memories. The survival of the Dudley Road legend also demonstrates the power of storytelling. Before modern technology, many stories were preserved through spoken tradition. Families and communities passed them along, adding details and changing parts of the story over time. Each person who repeated the legend became another link in the chain. The story survived not because every detail could be proven, but because it created an emotional response. A truly memorable legend usually contains something universal. It asks questions that people have wondered about for centuries. What happens when fear takes control? Can justice be forgotten? Do the mistakes of the past continue to affect the present? Can a place hold the memory of what happened there? These questions are part of why stories like the Three Nuns of Dudley Road continue to fascinate people. In the end, whether the legend is viewed as a ghost story, a cautionary tale, or a piece of local folklore, its greatest message is not about the supernatural. It is about humanity. It reminds us to question rumors, seek evidence, and remember that behind every accusation is a real person. It reminds us that fear can lead people to make terrible decisions, and that compassion and understanding are necessary to prevent history from repeating itself. The Three Nuns of Dudley Road may remain a mystery. Their names, their lives, and their true story may never be fully known. But the legend continues because it represents something larger than one road or one house. It represents the forgotten voices of the past. It represents the danger of judging without knowing. And it represents the human desire to believe that even when history tries to bury something, the truth has a way of finding a path back to the surface. Perhaps that is why the legend remains alive. Not because we know exactly what happened, but because it leaves us with a question that has followed humanity for centuries. When the voices of the past are finally heard, what stories will they tell us?